He was in the hospital for 6 out of the first 8 months of the year, and that's when I stopped acting. He went in the hospital on December 30th, and he died on January 5th.
At the height of his career, Gary Sinise quietly walked away from Hollywood, leaving fans wondering what could have prompted such an unexpected decision. For years, he offered little to no explanation to anyone at all. Now, following the heartbreaking loss of his son, Gary is finally opening up on the tragedy that reshaped his life and the difficult decision to step away from the spotlight. What exactly was happening behind the scenes? How Gary Sinise found his true calling. Most actors leave their characters behind on the movie set. Once the director finally yells cut, they take off the makeup, collect their paycheck, and move right along to the next big audition. But Gary Sinise did something entirely different. He let a single fictional role completely hijack his life, turning himself from a high-profile Hollywood elite into a real-life lifeline for thousands of military families across the country. In a world of fleeting stardom, his rise was truly remarkable. Long before he became a popular name, Gary was simply a theater-obsessed kid growing up in Chicago. In the mid-1970s, he co-founded the Steppenwolf Theater Company in a suburban church basement alongside his close friend John Malkovich. They had no money, but they possessed a raw, infectious energy. Gary worked tirelessly as both an actor and director, eventually catching the eye of major Hollywood studios and earning a well-deserved reputation as one of the most respected talents in the industry. His true breakthrough came in 1994 when he starred in the hit movie Forrest Gump, playing Lieutenant Dan Taylor, a bitter, wheelchair-bound Vietnam veteran who had lost both his legs and his will to live, required intense dedication. To capture the raw emotion of the role, Gary spent weeks talking to real wounded veterans. He listened to their struggles, witnessed their pain, and felt their deep frustration at being ignored by the very nation they fought for, which changed his own worldview forever. Surprisingly, the connection he felt to those veterans did not fade when the cameras stopped rolling. When real-world troops began calling him Lieutenant Dan on the street, he decided to use that recognition for good. In 2003, he co-founded the Lieutenant Dan Band. By trading his script for a bass guitar, Gary started traveling to military bases around the globe, performing high-energy classic rock shows to lift the spirits of active-duty soldiers and let them know they were appreciated. Realizing that concerts were only a temporary fix, in 2011, Gary established the Gary Sinise Foundation to build a permanent support network. The crown jewel of this massive charity is the RISE program, which constructs mortgage-free, custom smart homes for severely wounded service members. These state-of-the-art houses feature innovative designs like touchscreen controls, lowered countertops, and widened doorways, allowing injured veterans to navigate their daily lives with dignity, freedom, and newfound independence. Yet, while Gary was busy building a shield of protection around America's heroes, a silent enemy was quietly slipping past his own front door. The twin diagnosis that shattered their world. To the outside world, the summer of 2018 seemed like just another highly productive and successful period in Gary Sinise's life. He was busy managing his massive charity, playing classic rock shows for troops, and preparing for his next movie roles. But behind closed doors, a sudden and relentless storm was brewing. The comfortable stability his family had spent decades building was about to be completely uprooted by back-to-back health crises. It was a rapid double blow that would test the limits of even the strongest, most tight-knit household. The nightmare began in June 2018, when Gary's wife, Moira Harris, received a terrifying diagnosis. After nearly 40 years of marriage and raising 3 children together, she was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Upon hearing this, the family had to act fast by launching into an intense medical crusade to save her life. Moira underwent a difficult surgery to remove her affected lymph nodes, which was followed by months of grueling chemotherapy and aggressive radiation sessions that left her incredibly weak. Gary did his best to keep their daily routine running smoothly, but the heavy emotional toll was already starting to add up. Then, just as they were trying to find their footing, an even heavier blow landed on August 8, 2018. Their 27-year-old son, McKenna Mac Sinise, went to the doctor to check out a pain in his tailbone, and what they found was extremely shocking. It was revealed that Mac had cordoma, an incredibly rare and slow-growing bone cancer that starts in the spine. According to the Gary Sinise Foundation, cordoma is a 1-in-a-million disease that affects only about 300 Americans each year, and there is no known cure for it. In a single summer, Gary went from celebrating his family's successes to managing a home with 2 active cancer patients, a double tragedy that felt like a brutal punch to the gut. This turned their entire household into a quiet, highly stressful battlefield. Immediately, Gary and his daughters stepped into full-time caregiving roles, entering a state of pure survival where they had to track endless doctor visits, coordinate complicated medication schedules, and try to keep up their spirits while watching 2 of their favorite people suffer at the exact same time. There was no room for error, only a constant, exhausting focus on keeping everyone alive. Eventually, Moira finished her treatments, and her cancer thankfully went into remission. It was a massive, hard-fought victory, but the family's relief was immediately cut short when a follow-up scan revealed that Mac's tumor was starting to spread. The spine-chilling monster. While roughly 70% of initial cases of cordoma are successfully treated and cured through surgery, the remaining 30% face a much darker reality where the cancer aggressively returns and spreads. Unfortunately, Mac fell directly into that tragic 30% category, setting up an uphill battle. In September 2018, Mac began an intensive medical treatment and had a major operation to remove the primary spinal tumor in his back. This initial surgery seemed like a step forward, but the relief did not last long. In February 2019, he had to undergo a second spinal procedure to clear out a severe, painful infection. Just 3 months later, in May, a routine scan delivered the shocking news that the cordoma had returned and was actively spreading. By November 2019, Mac was prepped for a third massive spinal surgery to combat the fast-growing tumors. The physical toll of these repeated medical procedures was devastating. As the tumors grew, they aggressively pinched Mac's spinal cord, slowly and systematically stealing his physical freedom. Eventually, the disease paralyzed him from the chest down, taking away his independence. For a young man who had spent his entire life playing the drums and loving music, losing the use of his body was a painful adjustment. Yet, even as his physical world shrank to the confines of a wheelchair, Mac refused to let his situation define him. He kept showing up to his job at the Gary Sinise Foundation as the Assistant Manager of Education and Outreach, and he even helped launch the official GSF podcast. Also, Mac's secret weapon during these dark times was his deep, personal Catholic faith. Instead of becoming bitter or angry, he leaned heavily on daily prayer and spiritual devotion to find a sense of peace that often baffled those around him. He spent his days trying to comfort his worried family rather than focusing on his own pain, embodying the words of St. Augustine that our hearts are restless until they rest in God. He met every new physical limitation with a quiet smile and an unshakable resolve that inspired everyone who crossed his path. As Mac's medical needs skyrocketed, Gary reached a critical crossroads where he had to choose between his life under the studio lights and his duty as a father. Why the air traffic controller had to leave Hollywood. Gary Sinise had spent decades perfecting his craft, but when the pressure at home got to the peak, he chose to walk away from his career without a single backward glance. In 2020, after wrapping up his final acting roles in the films I Still Believe and Joe Bell, Gary quietly stepped out of the spotlight. There was no grand press conference, no dramatic retirement speech, and absolutely no public plea for sympathy. He simply walked away from multi-million-dollar paychecks and the charismatic allure of film sets because his family needed him to be fully present, and nothing else mattered to him anymore. He did not want attention or applause for doing what he felt was his basic duty as a father. He just quietly packed his things and went home. Gary took on a brand new, highly stressful role that he later described as being a family air traffic controller. Managing Mac's health had quickly turned into a demanding, round-the-clock operation, and Gary was the one staying up late to handle the massive, chaotic stream of incoming and outgoing medical data so that his son could focus all of his remaining strength on fighting the physical tumors pinching his spine. It was an exhausting job, but Gary took it on without complaint. But this was not even the full extent of the emotional storm the actor was managing out of the public eye. During this same period, Gary's elderly father suffered a severe stroke. His mother was left alone and unable to care for herself. With this, Gary was suddenly thrust into the middle of a multi-generational family crisis, caring for both his parents and his sick child. Choosing his family over Hollywood was not a difficult choice at all. To better manage this heavy, overwhelming load, Gary made the bold decision in 2021 to pack up their lives and move the family from California to Nashville, Tennessee. The move helped reduce their daily stress, brought them closer to supportive friends, and placed them in a welcoming community deeply connected to his charity work. For 5.5 long years, the Sinise family fought side by side, but by the cold winter of 2024, Mac's battle-worn body could carry him no further. The heartbreaking dawn of January 5th. On January 5th, 2024, 33-year-old McKenna Mac Sinise took his final breath. Surrounded by his family, he passed away peacefully, finally ending his long, heroic battle with cordoma. His mother, Moira, who had only recently won her own difficult battle with breast cancer, remained his constant companion during those final weeks. The relentless cycle of surgeries and hospitals were over, and a quiet, heavy silence settled over the Sinise household. For Gary, the loss of his only son was an incredibly deep wound. Yet, there was also a small sense of peace, knowing Mac was no longer trapped in a paralyzed body that had caused him so much physical pain. Fast forward to January 23rd, 2024. The family gathered for a private and deeply spiritual Catholic service to lay Mac to rest. They chose to keep this farewell intimate, choosing to grieve in private rather than under the harsh glare of the public eye. In fact, Gary kept the news of his son's death from the public for nearly 2 months, giving his family the quiet space they needed to process their heavy sorrow without the distraction of media cameras or internet gossip. Then, on February 27, 2024, the actor decided it was time to speak by posting an incredibly moving tribute on the Gary Sinise Foundation website. Gary wrote that Mac reminded them of the soldier at the end of the movie 1917, running forward while bombs exploded all around him, constantly getting knocked down but always choosing to get back up. The response to this tribute was immediate and massive. An outpouring of love and support flooded the family from military veterans, first responders, and everyday fans. Thousands of messages filled with condolences poured in, proving to Gary that the very community he had spent decades serving and comforting was now carrying him through his own tragedy. In his message, Gary connected his personal grief to the pain of the Gold Star families he had met over the years. He noted that he now understood their shared agony on a personal level, recognizing the devastating weight of losing a child. He wrote about how hard the fight had been, but emphasized that they found solace in knowing Mac was finally free from pain. Mac's sisters, Sophie and Ella, along with their children, found comfort in knowing he had fought an uphill battle and never quit trying. Even with one setback after another, Mac never stopped living, creating, or loving his family. But Mac did not leave this world empty-handed. He left behind a secret musical treasure that his father was determined to share. A posthumous masterpiece, bringing resurrection and revival to life. Long before his diagnosis, Mac was a deeply gifted musician who who practically lived and breathed rhythm. He started playing the drums when he was only 9 years old. Gary even bought him his first drum set back then, and Mac eventually grew into an exceptional player. He loved music so much that he occasionally stepped in as a substitute drummer for the Lieutenant Dan Band, ranking out right next to his proud father on stage. Mac later graduated from the prestigious USC Thornton School of Music, where he spent his days studying songwriting and complex composition. Even when the tumors took away his ability to play the drums or the piano, he simply refused to let his creativity die. In a remarkable display of grit, Mac taught himself how to play the harmonica, since it was an instrument he could still manage. Because his hands were paralyzed, he strapped a stylus to his hand to type out complex orchestrations on his laptop, clicking notes one by one, and recorded voice memos to guide his producers. He spent his final months collaborating from his wheelchair with his close friend and producer, Oliver Schnee, along with members of Gary's band. Together, they worked tirelessly to record his original compositions, including Quasi Love. Mac was incredibly happy because he managed to finish his very first album, Resurrection and Revival, which was produced the same week he passed away in January 2024. But the story did not end there. While sorting through Mac's computer files after his death, Gary made an emotional discovery. He found a massive vault of unreleased songs, including a beautiful piece called Angel's Theme that Mac had written years earlier as a college student at USC. As of then, Mac desperately wanted to record it, so he laid down the initial piano track himself, but he passed away before he could finish the full orchestral arrangement. Determined to honor his son's final wishes, Gary threw himself into finishing the remaining work. He gathered Mac's old classmates, Nashville session players, and bandmates to record the unfinished tracks. Gary executive produced the follow-up album, Resurrection and Revival, Part 2, and officially released it on November 10, 2024, on what would have been Mac's 34th birthday. Just as Mac had requested, every single dollar from the album's sales goes directly to the Gary Sinise Foundation to support wounded veterans and first responders. Through this masterpiece, Mac's physical absence was transformed into an eternal, healing presence. Gary's mission to turn mourning into legacy. Today, in 2026, Gary lives a more solitary, family-centric life in Tennessee, far away from the chaotic schedules of Los Angeles movie sets. He spends his days focusing entirely on what matters most, sharing simple moments with his wife Moira, his daughters Sophie and Ella, and his beloved grandchildren. He is no longer chasing the next blockbuster role or running from one red carpet to another. Instead, he finds comfort in the slow, peaceful rhythm of life in Nashville, proving that the brightest lights in his world are the ones shining inside his own home. This deep personal loss has fundamentally changed Gary's advocacy work, bringing a new layer of empathy to his mission. For decades, he traveled the world comforting the grieving families of fallen heroes, but now he walks that same difficult path himself. Now, when he meets a Gold Star family today, there is no need for rehearsed words of comfort. He can look them in the eye with a profound soul-to-soul connection that only comes from losing a child. He understands their silent agony because he has lived it, and that shared understanding allows him to offer a unique kind of genuine comfort. Also, Mac's memory now fuels the Gary Sinise Foundation with an even greater sense of purpose, with charity remaining more active than ever. Gary's team works with a renewed energy, knowing that every single project carries Mac's legacy of helping others forward. Gary also finds personal healing through the Lieutenant Dan Band. He still packs up his bass guitar to play high-energy classic rock shows at military bases around the globe. Every time he steps onto that stage and the drums start to play, he feels an instant, powerful connection to Mac, who once played those same rhythms right beside him. Ultimately, Gary Sinise's journey shows that while life can deal the most painful blows, a foundation built on love, faith, and service can withstand any storm. He refused to let tragedy make him bitter, choosing instead to turn his personal grief into a source of hope for others. Looking at the sacrifices Gary made, this is not a story of defeat, but of an unbreakable family bond. It really makes you pause and wonder. If you had to choose between the height of professional success and standing by your family through their darkest hours, would you have the courage to walk away from it all? Share your thoughts in comments below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. To enjoy more content like this, tap on the next video on your screen.